So, two attempts to change the constitution in 2 years, both very different.
Yeah, the main difference is the content. The previous constitution, which was defeated by 62% to 38 last year, was very left-wing in inclination. It aimed to narrow inequalities, to guarantee access to higher education, healthcare and water, and also to enshrine indigenous rights in law. Now, voters felt that that was a little bit too radical, even divisive. It doesn't take an awful lot to divide Chile politically. And now President Gabriel Boric supported that referendum, but he accepted the results at the time. But this time around, it's the right-leaning Congress that's driving the constitutional reform, and the Constitutional Council that's in charge of drafting it is dominated by parties of the right. The changes are in some cases the polar opposite of the previous referendum. There would be a limiting of state intervention, for instance, a deepening of market principles in the country that many see as a laboratory of libertarian trickle-down economics during the Pinochet years. In fact, in many ways, it's relitigating the 2021 presidential election that Gabriel Boric won against his far-right opponent, Jose Antonio Cast. These are very much the similar ideals that Cast held himself. Probably the most controversial article is an enshrining of the right to of the unborn in the Constitution, which could really roll back Chile's already limited abortion rights. And as it stands, however, the polls suggest that probably this referendum will itself be defeated. Polls have shown that at most 30 to 35% of people support the changes. So we're probably not going to see any major changes, which means that the 1980 constitution, enacted, ironically enough, under the military regime of Augusto Pinochet, but which has since been amended to make it a little bit more liberal, will remain in force.
You talk about how politically different this is, but what are we seeing on the ground in terms of the atmosphere, whether people are passive towards this or actually it's pretty divisive?
It's divisive, but it's really the only people who are really getting animated by it are people on the right, who pretty much an awful lot of these principles form their own core principles. And Chile is a country that's like that. It's very much split between left and right. It had been like that for much of the 20th century. It became even more so in 1970 when the socialist government of Salvador Allende came to power, and his very much left-wing reforms spooked the establishment. He was overthrown in 1973 with American backing by Augusto Pinochet's regime. Now, Pinochet's regime was a pretty ugly one. It killed over 3,500 people. It tortured about 40,000 people, and using fairly unspeakable, brutal methods. There are many people on the left, and even internationally as well, see it as a blood-stained regime. But there are others on the right in Chile who actually look at the period with a bit of fondness. They just see the economic benefits as they saw it, where the country was very much brought towards a market-oriented economy and very much unlike a lot of the rest of Latin America. And even when Augusto Pinochet was under house arrest in the UK in 1998, threatened with extradition to Spain, his supporters were fighting his case, saying that you couldn't even buy blue jeans in Chile when he came to power. So they have a very, very narrow way of looking at things. And even today, the left and the right tend to have a revolving door when it comes to the presidency, for instance, because the president can only serve one term at a time. So over the last 20 years, Michelle Bachelet on the left and Sebastián Piñera on the right have each served two non-successive terms. And we also see this divide.
So flipping of governments,
exactly,
left and right.
It happens all the time. And we even see a divide within families. The head of the drafting committee for this referendum is the conservative lawyer and politician Hernán Larraín, and he previously supported the Pinochet dictatorship. His son is the world-famous filmmaker Pablo Larraín, who has made a number of highly critical films of the Pinochet regime, including the Oscar-nominated No, which tells the story of the 1988 referendum, which rejected Augusto Pinochet's request to serve another 10 years in power.
Briefly, when will we know the result?
It will probably be after midnight at Paris time. The polls close at 6 o'clock local time in Chile, so we'll probably get the first results after midnight Central Europe.